Hi, I'm Randy Horton from Orthogonal. We're coming to you from the Boston Convention Center at the LSX World Congress. You can't make it to every conference, and even if you can, you can't possibly talk to every person who's interesting at a conference. So we're here to bring you some of the most interesting people from the conference and share a little bit about what they're seeing in the industry right now. Here right now with Denise Clarke from Philips. Hello, Denise, welcome.
Hi, Randy.
Tell us, for those who don't know, tell us who Philips is and what kind of things you work on, probably particularly in this space, the medical space. We don't need to get into toothbrushes at this point.
Oh, wow. Okay. So Philips is a very storied company. It's been around for about 134 years. Started in lighting and then more recently made the shift into MedTech and more specifically health tech. So there are 16 businesses, different business units. Most of them are focused on healthcare. And then we also have our personal and consumer health division.
Got it. And what do you work on?
So I work in precision diagnosis, mostly supporting the ultrasound business. But we have line of sight to like the imaging modalities like MR, CT, diagnostic health, and then ultrasound.
Got it. And what's your personal background? How did you land at this point in your career?
That's an interesting. I've always worked in medtech. And I started out in clinical research and then moved a little bit over onto the industry side and then a little bit of new product development. Then went back and did an MBA in health sector. And then I spun out of that into consulting. So I started out in a small shop consulting, medtech consulting company that was really focused on helping startups and mid-sized companies get to exit or grow. And then I transitioned into a larger life sciences strategy consulting company, which put me at the other side of the table, where then I was working with large strategics like Philips and other large medical device companies. And I did consulting for about 5 years before I went in and started working at Philips.
And what are you doing at Philips now?
So I work in strategy and business development, mostly focusing on our ultrasound business. So you wear two hats. You're really focused on helping develop the strategy for the company to remain competitive and have competitive advantage and be successful in the marketplace. And then the BD side is a dovetail of that, where we're looking at creating strategic partnerships, investments, and doing acquisition to help grow the business, basically. So that's why I'm at LSX, because it's a great forum to meet startups.
Terrific. I got a couple questions for you here. And you're going to have to pause because now I've lost the email. Is it at the bottom?
Probably at the bottom.
Okay. So I got a couple of questions for you here to talk about. Given the complexities of healthcare and the blurring boundaries between things and sort of the growth of this sort of ecosystem concept, where do you think the interesting things are going to be happening in sort of digital healthcare in the next couple of years?
Oh, okay. That's a great question. I think there's a bunch of interesting things that are happening in the space all at one time. One of the areas that we're really focused on is AI. And there's different sort of use cases for AI. But on the clinical side, we're seeing more and more AI being used in the detection and the characterization of disease. A lot of times that involve cancer, but you can see it expanding into other areas as well. The other side is on the more, not the clinical side, but more the administration facing side, where you're seeing generative AI come into more helping physicians basically capture notes on patient visits and create clinical summaries. An interesting offshoot of that, something I've become aware of recently, is that you're also seeing it on the payer-provider communication, where payers were using AI to review claims instead of having a person that was reviewing the claim. And what they found was that denials were going up. Denial of care, like those rates were skyrocketing. And then on the other side, what you started to see was like some of the hospitals started to use generative AI actually to write prior authorizations and submit that into the AI company. And then what did you see on that side? Then you saw the approvals shoot up. I think it went from 10% to 90%. So now there seems to be this arms race that's happening on the payer provider side, which I think is super interesting to watch. But regardless, I think another term size of digital health, I'm really interested in the layering of AI capabilities onto some of the robotic capabilities that you're seeing. And then at the same time, the sort of building up of like our 5G and our ultra low latency networks in the US and ex-US that sort of enable you to do telehealth and telerobotics and actually expand care to more rural and underserved areas and do things that you would have thought about before. I think potentially you could have specialist physicians telerobotically controlling surgeries that are happening miles away and perhaps in an underserved area. Or you could have a physician sitting somewhere that's providing care in a bunch of different tertiary centers, but while not having to physically be on site. So I think those are some interesting things. Another interesting area is wearables still. I think we're seeing some interesting things happen in wearables. Personally, I was very excited about the Apple Health where they have the Apple Watch, where they've now integrated hypertension or high blood pressure monitoring on that. I think that's a game changer. Globally, about 46% of people don't know they have high blood pressure. I think it's a little lower in the States. It's more like 20%. But then in the US, you also have this problem where people are put on medication, but they're not adherent to medication because they don't feel any different. They don't feel any benefit. So compliance tends to be pretty bad. But now where you have this monitor that's just sitting right on your wrist every day, I think that could be a game changer in health, because we know that uncontrolled high blood pressure is linked to high risk of cardiac disease, stroke, vision problems, kidney problems, et cetera. So I think that's pretty exciting. And then I think the other part about wearables and tele and biosensors is we're seeing from a policy perspective that telehealth grew a lot during the COVID era. And then another thing that was enacted around that time was the hospital at home concept, where the hospitals would be able to put medium acuity people, have them go out of the hospital and be in their own home and monitor from there. So I think that provides a very exciting use case and global application for some of these more remote monitoring capabilities. So I think that's an interesting area to watch. I know that bill is just coming up. It was supposed to expire. The hospital home bill was supposed to expire at the end of September, but they put an extension in to try and extend it for another 5 years. So that'll be super interesting to watch to see if that comes through.
So a lot of different places.
There's so much. Yes, exactly.
So let me go a little off script.
Okay.
So it's really also fascinating to watch MedTech professionals figure out how to better leverage AI in our MedTech devices. But it's also interesting to watch MedTech professionals figure out how to use AI to do their own jobs differently or better.
Yes.
I don't know if you're comfortable sharing anything about how you're seeing success or challenges or what kinds of things you're looking at for your daily work. Is your job changing because of AI?
Yeah, I'm very lucky to work for Philips. So they recently they deployed the use of Copilot, and it's integrated in some of our Microsoft applications. So we can use it in our Outlook and in our Teams, which we use for video conferencing, and some of our other applications. And personally, I find it a game changer. It just really makes you much more efficient in your day-to-day work. If you're on a web page and instead of reading the entire web page, you can just open the Copilot tab, summarize this for me, find this information in this large document for craft. I don't use it so much to craft emails, but I know some of my teammates do. Go through my email and summarize all the information on this particular investment or this particular project. Personally, I just find it makes me so much more efficient in my day-to-day.
So if they turned it off, you would notice?
I would definitely notice at this point. I think once you make the switch and you incorporate it into your day-to-day and how you do your work, it would be very hard if they took that away.
What advice would you have for an earlier stage strategy professional in this industry?
Oh, okay. Specifically in MedTech?
Yeah, MedTech, let's talk about.
Yeah, I think it's good to get hands-on experience as somebody. I came up into the field. I worked in clinical research, so I was always in the hospital in that context. And then for a while, I worked in direct patient care myself. So I think actually being in the hospital, understanding why there is inertia in healthcare is because there's so many things that healthcare professionals are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And this was before Epic came along, by the way. So I think having that context and understanding the challenge that our frontline workers and other specialists in every sector in the hospital basically are faced with helps you, I think would help people understand more, okay, you devise the strategy, it looks really good on paper, the numbers look good, but actually when we go to execution, what do we need to be thinking about in terms of at the front line?
All right. So get some real on-the-ground experience. Don't stay in the bubble of the office.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And specifically, I think that's so relevant in healthcare because there are so many challenges. And there's there's different archetypes in the healthcare spectrum as well, right? So you can go I worked a lot in academic medical centers, understanding the dynamics there. I've worked for the VA healthcare system, right? I worked for a while at Boston Medical Center, which is like an angel rescue hospital, right? So those are three very, very different like contexts from a hospital perspective.
And what are you hoping to pick up here at LSX? Anything you're looking to find out here or looking to meet?
I've actually met some very interesting people already. And there's been some in terms of like startups in the space, I've spoken to very interesting investors and getting a sense of what they're looking at or what they're here to see. So that's been especially helpful. And then the sessions, we just had a session on reimbursement, which is always like such a critical issue, I think, in medical device. And just hearing from people in different sectors and how they're thinking about some of these trends that we're seeing in terms of AI, in terms of even like these big tech companies that are coming into healthcare, right? How we're thinking about that.
Right.
To my previous example about the Apple Watch, right, and coming into hypertension. And what's the synergistic value there in terms of having them also in the ecosystem? Like, how does that change? How does that change screening, detection, basically detecting people with disease earlier and pushing them into the healthcare system so you can prevent maybe worse outcomes down the line?
Great. Thanks so much for coming out and sharing a bit about what you're doing and with us. We really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you, Randy.
Thank
Anytime.
you.